What's going on, guys? My name is Christopher and welcome to It's Complicated, the show where I talk about and showcase wristwatches. So if you love watches like I do, you're going to want to hit that subscribe button, then click on the bell and you'll be all set. Today we're talking another cool watch and film, the film Spectre, the watch, the Omega Seamaster 300 Spectre Limited Edition. Here we go. One of my favorite James Bond movies features my absolute favorite Omega watch. The film is Spectre, and it came out in late 2015, and it featured Daniel Craig returning as James Bond in a well-executed film. As you may or may not know, the James Bond movie franchise and the Omega Watch Company have been enjoying a 23-year-long relationship. So you can bet your ass that the next James Bond movie is going to feature an Omega watch too. Back to the Spectre watch. It's an Omega Seamaster 300 Spectre Limited. This is the first time in a James Bond film that the watch he wore ended up being sold as a limited edition by Omega. Now, the Seamaster 300 Limited is very similar to the Seamaster 300, but it does have some pretty major differences that I want to touch on. The Spectre 300 Limited has that rare lollipop second hand, which is just so cool, and I think it's so much nicer looking than the regular Seamaster 300. The Spectre watch also has a Gmt bezel instead of a classic dive bezel. It's a bi-directional Gmt bezel, and that's pretty cool too, especially if you're someone traveling in different time zones. I also appreciate how uniform the Gmt bezel is compared to the dive bezel. You know, the dive bezel has the 12 o'clock pip. The Gmt bezel just is a much cleaner looking bezel in my opinion. Even the dial on the Seamaster 300 Limited is a little different than the Seamaster 300's dial. The Spectre watch doesn't have the 12 o'clock on the dial. It just has the 369, and the Omega logo is a little bigger. I just think it's a sharper looking dial altogether. The back of the Seamaster 300 Limited shows that only 7,007 of these watches were produced. Of course, it has a display back to show off that beautiful movement. And you know, this being a limited edition, I really appreciate that the dial doesn't have a 007 or the hand isn't 007 or something a little tacky. Like, that is a really clean dial. And if you look at the back, sure, you could see that it's a James Bond watch. But if somebody else was just looking at your watch in a meeting or in a bar or whatever, they're not going to know it's a James Bond watch. And if you want to show off the James Bond thing, just flip it over. Of course, like I mentioned, Omega does have that relationship with the James Bond franchise. So, of course, this watch was shown off a couple times in the film, like in this great scene here.
0 to 60 in 3.2 seconds. Fully bulletproof. A few little tricks up her sleeve. It's a shame, really. She was meant for you, but she's been reassigned to 009. But you can have this.
Does it do anything?
It tells the time.
But shortly after that, he does hint that maybe the watch does a little more than just tell time.
Oh, one word of warning. The alarm is rather loud, if you know what I mean.
I think I did.
And did I mention that I love the Bond Omega NATO strap? It might explain why I have one on my Omega Speedmaster. But man, do I love the Omega Seamaster 300 Spectre Limited Edition. Just a fantastic watch. Love that lollipop secondhand. Love the dial. Love the back. And one day I hope to add that watch to my collection. As I mentioned before, this watch did have a limited run, and they tend to sell a little high on the secondhand market. The MSRP originally for this watch was $7,500 US, and just last month on eBay, one sold for damn near $10,000 US. So, cool film, amazing watch. And that wraps up another episode of It's Complicated. Don't forget to subscribe to the show, like this video, share it with all your friends, and I'll see you next time on another episode of It's Complicated.